Hey everyone, this is the Art of Warlord here, and today I have with me...
Karl Holbert. I'm the lead artist of Wizard 101.
Okay, and today he's going to be telling us some things about the making of Wizard 101 and just some stories in between. I want people to hear about stories that aren't really like, they're about the game, but they're not 100% like about the game. It's more like the challenges that you guys went through. It made it so then it was innovated for its time, but today you're like, because it was innovated back then, does not mean that we can help it now.
So things that we did back in the day that were, I mean, they weren't necessarily innovative. They were just kind of standard practices back in the day. And when we were working with things, the standard PC was, of course, I mean, you're talking about technology that's, think of like a computer from 10 plus years ago. And then we were actually trying to aim lower than that because most kids at the time, their computer was a hand-me-down.
Yeah.
Right. So we couldn't necessarily, even at the time, kind of shoot for specs that were cutting edge. So when we came up with things and we came up with a look, we were very much working within the boundaries of, okay, here's what we can load, here's what we can put into memory on these older machines. And because of that, we had to make a lot of concessions. Characters had to be fairly low poly. Creatures and spells, you know, we had very specific ways. Like our particle effects and stuff are very much done in 3D Studio Max, as opposed to most modern particle effects, which are done in Engine. So there's things like that, and back in the, like I said, back then that was standard practice. That was very much the norm. Now, you know, we come on 10 years later. And the thing we run into is, and the thing that's the constant struggle as the art lead is trying to make things constantly look better. For instance, we just got done revamping the front of the game. We wanted to, you know, redo that, but we're sort of locked in to our skeleton and rig system because we have so many animations on the current characters. So let's say if we updated the player model to give the player like eye movement and like mouth movement and stuff like that, right? That means we have to kind of update the rig, which means we would have to update all those different animation sets, which is not a trivial task. On top of every single mount in the game has its own character animations with it, right?
Yeah.
So think of how many mounts there are in the game. Right, and then we would have to update all of those animations as well. So that's it's hard for us on some extent, especially for as an art director, because you always want to push the boundaries. You always want to make it the best you possibly can. But we're working within this kind of like tight box of technology that's over 10 years old.
Yeah.
And like I said, we really do try to update it and keep it fresh. You know, we added the talk animations for the characters. Was it like a year ago, I think now?
Whenever Polaris was released.
With Polaris, yep. And then when we did Mirage, we added the eye movement. We figured out how to basically go back and add an extra bone on the rigs and kind of do eye movements as well. So, I mean, and that's the thing is we're trying to figure it out too. Like with the character update and stuff like that, we're trying to figure out if we can do it, and we very much, you know, want to. It's just a time thing. I hope at the end of the day that everybody is you know is happy with what we put out.
Yeah. Your newest bundle that just came out the other day, everyone loves it. I don't know.
Really?
I don't know if you've seen the feedback for it yet or not.
I haven't. We are like neck deep in trying to get a bunch of stuff done.
Okay. Yeah. Well, just so you know, it's been a huge success. People love the house. People love the mount, the outfit. They love it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, one of our animators actually, the little hand, the kind of hand motion in the carriage, like the out the window hand motion. That was like he kind of came up with these like, yeah, I wanted to do this because I love doing this in the car when I was a kid. And we're like, okay, I mean, it looks kind of weird, but okay, why not? Let's give it a try. You know, I've been art lead since 2010. Pretty much started kind of with Grizzleheim and Celestia.
Yeah.
Those were kind of the look on those was very much like all me, and then you know, just been art lead ever since.
Yeah, honestly, Grizzleheim is such an awesome world. I love the colors that are used in the world. I don't know if you're in charge of colors or something, but the color, I love the richness of the wood.
Thank you. Yeah, I purposely went with a much kind of more orange to contrast the blues and the greens that are like, because we wanted the rich kind of blue and greens that you get from like pine trees.
Yeah.
So we went with the more orange and yellows in the wood to kind of really make the two contrast and pop off of each other.
Yeah. In game, I'm a big housing nerd, so like any sort of housing items that come out for Grizzleheim, I usually find a spot for them Personally, my favorite world is Marleybone, which is really unpopular, but that's just
okay.
that's just my personal favorite. So mixing the two together is my
I
favorite
built both
thing.
of those hubs. I built the Grizzleheim hub and I built the Marleybone hub.
Oh. Oh, yes. The like, I don't know. Everyone's like, "Oh, rooftops, blah blah blah." And I'm like, they're so like the idea that you're wandering over these busy city rooftops and no one asks any questions.
Yeah. So you know what's funny is back in the day, it's a good story. We were only going to have one zone of rooftops. We were going to have also like sewer adventure zone, and then the other adventure zone was going to be alleyways. It would feel vertical, right? So you had these different vertical, and it just back then. I mean, you want to talk about small team? Wizard 101 was like a tiny team.
Yeah.
It was basically me and Jeff Toney.
Yes.
And there was another artist, Eric McKinney, and that was pretty much the entire environment team. And then I think McKinney actually left during Mushu. So then there was just two of us doing pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So that's why it ended up being just the rooftops, because when we built them back then, we built them in like kind of like Lego piece fashion, where you could just kind of plug like here's a turn, here's a 90 degree, here's this, and it was great, but it was also frustrating. So when we got to Grizzleheim, and I actually kind of was semi in charge during Grizzleheim. I wasn't officially art lead yet. I was just kind of acting art lead at that point. So when we got to there, that was the first thing I did. I was like, hey, I don't want to do Lego pieces anymore. I want to make adventure zones that feel like living zones that you're walking around in, because it's the other way. While it's efficient, it gets very monotonous.
Yeah.
So, and it has its place when you're doing something that's really repeatable, like a sewer or something like that. Sure, great. Like that type of building method works fine. When you're doing something that's like a forest or
it's not organized, it's random.
Yeah. I mean, it's a natural environment. It's haphazard, so it doesn't fit. So that's why if you notice when you get to Grizzleheim, that's where the change happens, where all the quote unquote streets or adventure zones, they start being more hand constructed rather than being Lego piece. Another cool thing about Marleybone. So, do you know about the person on the top of Digmore Station?
I do not actually, and I think that's just for lack of me hanging out too long in Digmore Station.
Okay, so I know a few people have seen it, but I don't know how widely known it is. So, if you go to Digmore Station, and as soon as you come up the elevator, you look at the front, where the clock tower is, and you look over to the left, you'll see it looks like a person hanging out on the rooftop, and they're very small. And the story behind that is actually funny. It was a mess up that I did.
At least you admit to it.
Oh, I will fully admit to it. And we left it in because it was really kind of fun. We joke around that it's Batman or the Shadow, someone like kind of looking over the city. But what it is it's actually a flat character model. It's a size comparison model. So that when we're building, we can put it next to things and see like, oh, here's how big the player is going to be in this situation.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
And he's in like T-pose, like he's in bind pose. So I put him up there, like kind of get him out of the way while I was working on something, and then forgot about him when I went to export the scene, and so he's been there ever since.
I'm just imagining like, you know that person that they did one thing one time and then no one ever lets it go. Is that yours?
No. That's not. I mean, I don't know if I have any of those. The only one that we joke, so the other gentleman I mentioned, Eric McKinney, he was kind of the king of those moments. I know that Alec has talked to you about the bamboo.
Yes.
So that was a huge deal because that was right after he left. He basically built the Lego pieces for Mushu and then left. And then we go in there and they're like, everything is running horribly. Like, what is wrong? Like, why is this level running so bad, right? And so we go to look, and the bamboo, which is what we call card facing, so it's an illusion. It's basically just an alpha cutout.
Yeah, no matter what direction you look, it'll stay.
No matter what direction it looks, it faces you, right? So we opened the scene, and like he had built it to where it looked nice, but he had also not calculated the fact that we were going to build like 30-40 piece like adventure zones. And so by the time we got done, there was like something like 300,000 individual facing planes of bamboo. And it wouldn't have been so bad if they were static, but because they face it, you have 300,000 objects trying to calculate where the player is at any given moment. So it just like it bombed. And so the only way we could figure out how to kind of like thin it out was I had to go in and literally go to list and max of all the different bamboo and like go like every third one had to be deleted, and I had to do that by hand for like 300,000 pieces or 300,000 objects.
Oh, I can just imagine that. Like and you're just like, you don't know which one it's gonna pick up, so you don't want to delete all of them.
Exactly. Yeah, so it was literally a okay, you get deleted? No, you don't get deleted, you don't get deleted. You get deleted? No, yes, no, yes, no, and like going through it, like literally going down a list. I think it took me it was just shy of a month to go through all the adventure zones and all the areas in Mushu and like cull all the bamboo.
Well,
so that it would run okay.
I guess that's kind of good news in a sense, because at least you didn't launch the game like that, or did you?
No, we did not. We caught that one in alpha. But yeah, and so he constantly he actually left to go do another job, and then came back just recently, and then left, and then left again. But when he came back, I bought him a piece of lucky bamboo and had it sitting on his desk when he returned to work. So, but the other story with him which is great, is so back in the day we also didn't have concept artists. Anything that was done was either straight out of our heads to the computer, or we kind of just roughed it out on paper. And so when McKinney decided, he's like, I'm going to concept out the Mushu Hub, because he built the Mushu Hub, and he was like really super passionate about Kung Fu, and so I was like, we're like, cool, okay. So he starts off on like one piece of paper, and he draws like the market area, and then he's like, oh, I need another piece of paper, and so he starts drawing, like, I can't remember, like the beginning of like the archway that goes to the Great Muda, but then as he's drawing, like his perspective gets off, and so like each sheet, the proportions get larger and larger. So while the entire market area is on like one sheet of paper, like he ended up using like 40 sheets of paper all taped together. Like he had like the break room, he had this like 2 tables stuffed together, and like this huge. And by the end of it, like I think like the palace was on like 8 or 9 sheets of paper taped together. And it's like the same size building as like like the whole marketplace, but it's like this huge, massive roll. If you ever come into the building or take a tour next, you have to ask Jeff Tony to show you, because we still have it. We still have it. It's giant. The Krakatopia one's not that bad. Like the Krakatopia one's like just a few sheets of paper, but like it was just, the Mushu one got like way out of hand, and it was super comical, because it was like you'd walk into the break room and it was just huge monstrosity of like tape and like pencil marks, and you're just like, dude, what are you doing? It's like, I don't know, but I can't stop. Grizzleheim, like, so the runes that we use, like, so all the text that we use in the game, the Krakatopia hieroglyphs don't mean anything. Those were literally just, I looked at a sheet of hieroglyphs and kind of like textured out, and they made little crocodile hieroglyphs. But when we did Grizzleheim, the runes are all 1 for 1, right? So they're 1 for 1 with a standard Arabic alphabet. So for instance, like we got into trouble because there was a person who was working on it who was actually typing like not necessarily nice things. Putting it on stuff. So it then became a thing where, okay, everything has to be either approved by writing, or it has to go through the art lead or whatever. So at Grizzleheim, when we found out this had happened, it was like almost I think we were in QA at that point in time. So we're like, okay, we have to quickly go back and change things. So that's why in Grizzleheim, if you actually go and look, a lot of the things that have runes on them just literally label what they are. So for instance, like the main like fort in Grizzleheim, the big stones that have the runes that go down, it just says Big Bear Fort. And like I think there's a chair that says like sit here. Like a bunch of the runes literally just say like rock, Well,
the thing is a lot of the people on there actually have gone in and written out what they say.
That's awesome.
But
That's awesome.
But the thing is they're like, why does it say this? Why? Of course, it's this rock. Like,
yeah, no, that was the thing. It literally, part of it was we were just trying to be funny, and part of it was we were just crammed for time and it had to say something. But we had to, we didn't have time. Like, writing literally didn't have time at that point to go through and check everything.
Yeah.
So it was a matter of all hands on deck. It was like me and I think Jeff or someone else, and we were like, okay, because we know it was like me and like one other person I trust, and we're like, okay, we're gonna go through and make sure everything is okay.
Yeah.
And it was just, okay, what can we do? What's the name? Let's sit here, Big Bear Fort, a rock, big pole, whatever it was that we were just kind of like quickly labeling things. But then when you get into Celestia, it's really cool. So I actually developed that font, the Under the Waves font. I actually created that and made my own, made the font for the game with that. And that one we did some really fun stuff with. So like if you go into Celestia, like all the panels have stories and stuff on them, and there's very little of just like random gibberish. Most of it should actually be like full backs. Like writing actually took the time to like create little backstories and stuff that were on all the textures, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
So that one, and then I can't remember how much we used it, but in Chrysalis, the mice actually had their own font too. That was called Paw and Scratch. And I think it was just used really sparingly. There's not a whole lot like there was in Celestia, but there's that font as well. So, yeah.
The time and dedication that you guys put into just the small details is really good.
Thank you. And what's cool is it makes me feel really good to hear you say that, because being an environment artist, one of my philosophies with environment art, and I'm a big history nerd as well. Like, I don't just like it. I got into environment art because I like architecture. Like, I geek out over architecture, especially like mid-century, like clean lines, stuff like that. But what's interesting is one of the things that, studying architecture and looking at just environments in general as you're becoming an environment artist, one of the things that always struck me, and one of the things I always kind of push with my guys, is that an environment is not just it's not just the setting, it's not just a backdrop, right? An environment is something that it tells its own story, and an environment influences a character as much as the character influences environment. So what we try really hard to do, and I try to make my guys do, is and you'll notice this if you look in the Grizzleheim Hub, like you'll walk by a house and there'll be like a bucket and a mop sitting on the front porch.
Yeah.
And it seems really mundane, but it's one of those things that subconsciously, you might never notice it. You might walk by and be like, oh, there's a bucket and a mop. But your subconscious is basically putting, as humans, we want to put together connections and stories. So when you're walking by that, your subconscious is basically saying, oh my gosh, there's someone who lives here and they were just cleaning, and there's a mop and there's the bucket, and obviously you wouldn't, like, there's all these things subconsciously that go along with that, just that placing that bucket and the mop there, that tell a little story, a little vignette, that it's not a major story, but it makes the environment feel more alive because it feels lived in. So thank you for appreciating those details, because we actually do. It's one of those things that it's done very consciously, so it's not just haphazard.
Do you remember meeting Mia? Her name's Mia, also known as Dearly Doodles. Have you kept up with her work recently?
I have.
How does it feel like seeing those artists' type of work, and they're inspired by the things that you help make?
It's really fun being on the other end of it, like being on the end of the person who is inspired. Like, when I see people like Mia, like, coming up with their own stories and creating their own characters based on the stuff that we brainstormed and came up with, it's really, it just tickles me. Like, I just think it's like the best thing. It's the highest form of flattery. Yeah. So when we get fan art, I love it. Like, I absolutely, it's the best.
I know that throughout the years that you've been working there are just a lot of crazy things that do happen, and some of them you might just forget. But yeah, like sharing your own tidbit of information about, or just a story.
Some fun production stories.
Yeah.
So way back in the day, back when I was an environment artist before I became art lead, back when we were doing the first story arc, making the first basically like the Malister arc, right? So you're talking about like Wizard City, Crocotopia, Marleybone, Mushu, Dragonspire. We were a very small team, and we were very kind of a bunch of us were very young and very rambunctious. So I don't even remember how it started, but we started buying like Nerf guns to bring to the office, and we bought lots of them. And it was literally you could be working, and all of a sudden just a Nerf battle break out in the art pit. Because you've seen how we work. We work in basically a giant open kind of pit area, and there would be a Nerf battle just like break out in the middle of the day. One of my favorite things to do is the way our desks were stacked. It was two desks facing each other, and then there was another row of desks with two desks facing each other. So there was a guy named Adam who was an animator who sat basically like 2 rows back. So his desk was like, if I looked over, I could see his screen. And he would get like really intent, like he'd get like right up on his screen, and he'd get like really intent when he was working. And my favorite thing to do was like take a Nerf dart and shoot it and like suction cup it to his screen, like right next to where his field of view is, because it would scare the living poop out of him. And then great story with Jeff Toney is the prize of all prizes was if you could do what was called the unicorn dart. And Jeff Toney, because he's follically challenged on top. Was if you could get a dart to stick onto Jeff Toney's forehead, that was the ultimate prize. Yeah, no. So what ended up killing it back in the day, so one of the guys who is the effects artist, Russ, he is known as being a troublemaker a little bit around here.
Yeah.
In a good way. He's like the kind of frat boy prankster that frat boy prankster friend that everybody has. And he's a great guy. So he went out and bought this gun, and it was like the most loud, obnoxious thing in the world. Like it was like fully automatic. Like it had this clip, and it would like empty this clip in like seconds. And it was so loud, like the programmers, because it used to be all artists were in the pit and the programmers were in offices surrounding the pit.
Yeah.
And so he like let rip with this thing once, and it made this horrific like sound, and like instantly there was like boom 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 boom, all the doors like just slammed in a row, and then we were like, oh, we're in trouble. So, like, I think it was like the power ranger was William, our producer, just basically said he was like, no more Nerf guns.
It was at that moment you knew you messed up.
We're like, oh no, we're in trouble. We're in so much trouble right now. Another great William story. So I don't know if anybody has told you. So William, our producer, I know you've probably seen him on different KI Live segments and stuff like that. He's a really nice guy, but very deadpan, right? And I think it was. I mean, we were kind of a very fun-loving kind of back in the day game development. Everything was very uncorporate. Everything was very kind of like a bunch of buddies getting together to do something.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget when management, like when Ely and Todd, they decided they wanted to put in cameras on the door. It was like a huge stink. It was like, oh, you're gonna keep track of our time, like it was like it was really weird. Like, and now thinking back on it, it was kind of weird, but we were like really upset with them about it. And it was just before, so maybe a week later, we get an email from William, and it's a thing. It's like, hey, now we need like everybody needs to log bathroom breaks, and there's going to be assigned times for bathroom breaks, and like if you can't hold it to your assigned time, you have to hold it to your assigned time, where you'll be, something will be consequences. And it was like totally deadpan, and everybody was just like ready to like riot. I mean, pitchforks are being sharpened, torches are being lit, like we're ready to riot. And then we get this April Fool's.
Is it this guy? I feel like it's this guy. Is it this guy?
I'm just like, I don't even know what the heck that picture is from. It's like a stapler and Jello.
That was the KI Live Office episode.
Oh, was that the one with Malister?
Yeah.
Okay.
The best,
right, I
the best
now.
video ever. Just have to say. But no, like, I don't know how many people that I know. Do you have an idea of how many people I have talked to at the KI office, or no, not really.
I'm guessing, of course, Tony, and then I'm guessing Tom,
like Tom, Tony,
Renee,
Alec, Renee, Joel, Leah.
Joel.
Yep. Like, I've done actually a draw pile with Adam Rausch.
Adam Rausch.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like talking to all of them, they all like love their jobs. And the other thing I've learned is everyone that's there has their own path to get there. Most of them have not intentionally gone for it.
Yeah, it's weird. Kings Isle is interesting. We're kind of a odd duck as far as the industry is concerned. I mean, I've worked at many other industry jobs. I worked for Nintendo for a while. I worked contract. I've done it before I came to Kings Isle, and it's when the studio was started, I think the most crunch we ever did was basically before we released Dragonspire. And even then, it was nothing compared to what the rest of the industry experiences. And since then, what's interesting is there's a lot of usually most companies have high turnover rates. And Kings Isle is very much a lot of people get here and stay because the company treats us really well for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, every place, grass is always greener, blah blah blah. Every place has its issues, but I mean, Kings Isle, there's a lot of things, and I think the thing that makes it even more so than the company are the people. Like, I mean, company or not, like, I adore the people I work with. My team, I will go through hell and back for my art team.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely respect all of them, and I think the world of them. I mean, they're kind of my family.
So there was the Karl Holbert interview. I hope everyone enjoyed watching it and hearing the stories. And thank you, Karl, for letting me interview you. It was awesome. So let's wrap this up. Like, subscribe, comment, believe in the myth. See you in the next one. Bye.